Now on the 24th day of the first month, as I was by the side of the great river, that is the Hidekel, I lifted my eyes and looked, and behold, a certain man clothed in linen. Clothed in linen. That is the clothing given to those who will marry. In the wedding of the Lamb, the chosen few will be given fine linen, while those who are invited to the wedding will be given white clothes or white robes. So those who are invited are those who are the many, who in the harvest die and then resurrect as the people. They are invited. They have white robes because they died and resurrected. They washed their clothes in the blood of the Lamb, so they have white robes. But those who do not die, who do not have to take off their clothing, meaning who do not have to come out of their body, they will be transformed. And these bodies will be transformed into the eternal bodies. And those bodies are represented by fine linen. So Mashiach and the bride are dressed in fine linen. So we could then conclude through that it is Mashiach who is appearing before Daniel. So this is very important. Mashiach, because he's dressed in linen, as in the wedding of the Lamb in Revelation 19. It is Mashiach appearing to give the word, because Yahushua Mashiach is the word of Yahweh, obviously before he came in the flesh. So we just see that it says a certain man clothed in linen. That's verse 5. Ish echad labush badim. So one man dressed in linen, whose waist was girded with gold of Uphaz. Gold represents the kingdom. The gold of Uphaz was very special. It was very pure. Means desire of fine gold. That's how they translate it. But it's because of the fact that the place was known for its fine gold. Yeah, Ophir, which is also mentioned in Isaiah as two types of gold. Well, in Isaiah, there's a prophecy in which Yahweh is talking about the few and the many. The few are represented by the gold of Uphaz or gold of Ophir. And the many are represented by gold who has gone through fire to become purified. So, two types of gold. One who has to die, the many, going through the fire to be purified. And one who was pure already because, in the case of the gold, because of the place where it came from, known for that type of gold. But in the case of the spiritual sense, because they accepted Mashiach and the doctrine to be cleansed before the Great Tribulation. When it comes to Ophir, which is the root of Uphaz, it means reducing to ashes. Reducing to ashes. So, this is a confirmation that in the end, when Yahweh will manifest as the Ehyeh, I will be, in the end times, for the redemption. And everything that I already explained regarding the third year and other names that are around in this chapter, it says that he will manifest in a rapid way, represented by the Hidekel, the river, in linen, because he comes for his wife, for his bride, to take her to the wedding of the Lamb in Revelation 19, whose waist is girded. We see that in Isaiah and Ephesians. In Isaiah 11:5, regarding the second coming, this is very important, and I say very important to understand the second coming, or to take in account when reading scriptures, because in Christianity we were taught pretty much that Yahushua already fulfilled everything that has to do with Mashiach, or that has to do with Yahweh coming to earth, and now the only thing that has to happen is the rapture. It's pretty much, in a nutshell, Christian doctrine, which is completely wrong. Yahweh speaks of a second coming meaning on earth as he did the first time. That is something that in Christianity is not understood at all. So, as I was saying, in Christianity, the second coming is not taught. So when I mention it, I know it's an issue or a surprise for most people when they just came from the Christian doctrine. It's funny how it would even actually be less of an issue for Judaism or those people who believe in Judaism, because many in Judaism already believe in two messiahs, which would be explained as first and last. So it is a lot easier to explain it to a Jewish guy than to a Christian, because a Christian will fight you without knowing scripture. While, well, like I said, Jewish people may use the Talmud or whatever to go against Mashiach, Yahushua, but at least you would be able to use many of the things that they already believe to explain how everything makes sense, how everything fits together. And that's why, at least my point is, it would be easier to explain the second coming of Messiah to a Jewish guy who doesn't believe that Messiah already came than to a Christian who already believes that he came, but he believes that he will pass by on a rapture, not come again. So that's a big issue, and that is because obviously of teachings that they have been given from pulpits for decades that have been passed around, because one person came up with a certain interpretation, came up with a certain doctrine, and that person taught like 5, and those 5 went and taught like 10. And because sadly pastors in Christianity are not very original, they just repeat what they were taught by whoever is their cover, or their spiritual head, as their pastor, theologian, university, whatever. So it is very sad that what they do is just repeat without checking, pretty much like they do in school. When you go to school, there's a person called a teacher who is just repeating what they were taught to repeat, not check, not investigate, not add knowledge, only keep on repeating what you were told by the government that should be what is taught to the people, to the kids. So that's why in the United States and other places they have been taking out creation, putting Big Bang, evolution, and other things to make it seem, to them at least, more scientific. So in Isaiah 11:5 it says, as I was saying, regarding the second coming. This is Isaiah, this part is regarding the second coming. Actually, in Isaiah 11, we are taught about his 2 times coming. The first as the root, and the second as the branch. That is in Isaiah, in case you want to read it later. So, verse 4 and 5 of Isaiah 11, it says, "But with righteousness he shall judge the poor." Remember that Yahushua came to give us mercy, favor. He said that he didn't come to judge, even though all judgment was given to him. But he came as the lawyer to defend us in judgment. So the last, who is sent by the first, the second coming, who is sent by the first coming, will be given the authority to bring judgment through his testimony. Just as when a person testifies in a courtroom, if he says, "I saw this person kill this other person," that testimony is enough to take that person to jail. So that's why the testimony of the 2 witnesses is key when it comes to condemning the evil people of the world. because that will be the second time in which the world rejects the Almighty in a clear way, his son, first and second coming, Israel and the Gentiles, the nations. They will both fall in the same hole pretty much by killing Mashiach. So, but with righteousness he shall judge the poor. And decide with equity for the meek of the earth. He shall strike the earth with the rod of his mouth. He shall strike the earth with the rod of his mouth. When Yahushua came, he didn't do this. He spoke in favor. He came to bring life. The last comes as Yirmiyahu, who has to destroy before he can build. So that destroying will be seen by the people as evil. That's why he comes as a thief in the night. He comes as a lion, yet he came as a lamb. So people are expecting that same personality, yet a lion acts completely different than a lamb. And that's what people don't understand. They don't see, even though it's written all over the place. They themselves call the Mashiach the Lion of Yahudah. But when he appeared on earth the first time, obviously he appeared as the lamb because he died on Pesach. And well, many other things. He came as the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, not as the king, not yet. That is happening in this end times. So he shall strike the earth with the rod of his mouth. As we see in many other parts, I have explained it a lot. I'm not going to get into it unless you guys want me to. You can ask any questions you want. Just like the beast will be given a sword, a great sword to bring, well, to take away the peace of the earth and therefore start the war. So the beast, world leader, will use the armies of the world. He will use weapons. He will use fire. He will kill, literally, people. The last witness, like Moshe, the prophet, he will strike the earth, but with his words, with his teaching, not with a gun. That's very important also. Because, well, in Judaism, there are some who are expecting Mashiach ben Yosef to come as a soldier of an army, perhaps in Israel, most likely. Yet it's not the case. Yahweh said it in Sechayahu that he wouldn't do it with an army. He wouldn't do it with physical strength, with weapons. He would do it with the spirit of his mouth, represented here by the rod of his mouth, because through the spirit he will punish, just like when Moshe had a rod in his hand to represent the name of Yahushua, which is now in the mouth of the last to bring the plagues on the world. So he shall strike the earth with the rod of his mouth, and with the breath of his lips he shall slay the wicked. So through the teaching, as with the testimony, if a person testifies, he doesn't have to be the one to inject whatever they put in the person when they are in death row. Let's say a person testifies, this other person killed 10 people. He deserves death. So he's going to be killed by the government in 30 years, like they kind of do. When that person who was punished because of the testimony of one person, when that person is being killed, it's not the witness who kills him. Even though back in the day, the witness will be the first to throw the stone. So back in the day, it was kind of like that, and there is a connection. There is a reason why. But in a bigger sense, when we take history, it's more like we see in the courtrooms of nowadays, or at least in some of those, because not all courtrooms are the same, depending on the case. So in this case, let's say serial killer. One person testifies that serial killer deserves death. He's given death by the government, and one person gives him whatever is given to him to die, an injection pretty much. but it's not the witness who has to put the injection. What I mean by that is that the word of the witness, which came from the breath of his soul through his mouth, that was the word that made that person die eventually through different physical means. What I mean by that is that the last will come and preach, and through the testimony, the words that need to be said in order for the plagues to manifest will be said. So through the testimony, the punishment will happen. The souls of people will see the connection, not their eyes. They won't see the connection, obviously, because the plagues will be natural and other things. Yet it will come from the mouth of the two witnesses, but they will hate the two witnesses because spiritually, Satan knows where it will be coming from. Just like when he knew that people were coming out of Sheol, and he realized it was Yahushua who was taking them out, as in resurrecting them. So I hope that is being clear because it's very important. Just the witness doesn't have to kill everybody with his own hands. Through his word, the punishment will fall. And it could be taken even to Revelation 19, when already died and resurrected, and first and last became one. And then we come in Revelation 19 to the war of Har-Megiddo. And in that war, through only spirit, we will defeat our enemies. So in that moment of Revelation 19, this could be taken in a more literal sense, but this is speaking about the first 3.5 years of the last 7 when the two witnesses appeared. So verse 5, it says, righteousness shall be the belt of his loins. Righteousness shall be the belt of his loins, and faithfulness the belt of his waist. Righteousness and faithfulness. Righteousness and faithfulness. In Ephesians, as I said, 6:14, it says, stand therefore, having girded your waist with truth, having put on the breastplate of righteousness. So the whole congregation needs to know that once we accept Mashiach, we start a war against principalities, authorities, the angels, the demons, and those who control this reality. That's why when we start in the way of Yahweh, we begin trials, tests. We start going through certain things in which we are being tested to see if we are really part of the army. And once we are part of the army, we start having fights with entities. And I don't mean it in a Hollywood type of way. I mean it in the sense of we start having fights with the thoughts that come to our minds. We start having battles with the flesh that wants us to sin. So we have to fight with it and dominate pretty much those desires of the flesh. Come to control the flesh, just like one can come to control an animal that has no understanding. So one cannot tell the animal why it's better to act a certain way. One needs to make the animal do it. And that's what one has to do with one's flesh, one's evil inclination. And that is part of the battle. Obviously, there are other things that can come the more we walk in the way of Yahweh. So we need to know that when we accept Yahushua, we need to fight a war. People think that when they accept Messiah, all of a sudden everything will be easy and simple. And even though, blessed be the Most High, that He gives us everything that is needed, and therefore, how can I put it? Yahushua Himself said that his yoke and his burden was pretty much easy and light. So through him we can do all things. So everything becomes easy with him. But when we take our eyes off of him for a moment, for an instant, is when things seem hard and get hard. And that's why Peter, when he was walking on water easily, all he had to do was believe. When he took away his eyes from Mashiach, he went down and started crying for help. So that's my point. He makes things easy. But when we are starting and we don't understand that clearly, the tests that we go through may make us think that it is a hard way, and that perhaps even some people get the thoughts that they are doing wrong, that they shouldn't be believe in certain this doctrine, for instance, because all of a sudden they find issues with family members. Because when they believe the second coming, they talk to a person that they believe it was a brother, and that brother ended up calling you crazy. Instead of seeing those things as moments in which your eyes were open to see that certain friends were not really friends, or things like that, some people going with the desires of the flesh and the emotions actually think, oh, if this was good, I should be good with everybody and everybody should accept it like I did. But that's not the case. If that was the case when Yahushua came, he would have 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 100,000 disciples. But he only had 12, and one betrayed him. One denied him. One didn't believe him when he saw him resurrected. So we need to understand that the truth in this reality, to hold on to it, is a war. That's why pretty much you need to gird your waist with truth. And that's what the whole congregation has to do. And this is important because Daniel sees this man in linen girded already. Yet Ephesians, that tells us that we must gird ourselves with the truth, etc., was written after Mashiach. Like I said, once Mashiach came, he brought division. That's why through our belief in him, there is a war. Because he brings division from falsehood, false friends, false brethren, etc. So it will bring division, and we must accept it. We must understand why it is, how it happened to him. Then it is normal that it should happen to us. That they rejected him, so they will reject us. People who we love also. So when Mashiach came is when we started a war. That's why Ephesians was written after Mashiach resurrected. Now we are seeing an image of this, a person girded for war, but in the Old Testament, in a vision that represents the end. My point is, Daniel is seeing Mashiach, pretty much given a vision or representation of the second coming of Yahweh to earth, girded for the war, because the first manifestation would have already happened, and therefore the war would have started already. Hope that's clear. So the 144,000 need to gird with the truth their waist. The last has an extra belt, which is righteousness. Righteousness, according to Isaiah 11. So now we go back to Daniel, and it says, a certain man clothed in linen, whose waist was girded with gold of Uphaz. Gold represents the kingdom. Pretty much the kingdom of righteousness, the kingdom of truth. So his waist was girded with gold because he represents the king, the leader of the kingdom, who is ready for war with the truth and justice, to bring his enemies to ashes. That's why Uphaz means, comes from Ophir, which means reducing to ashes. So it represents the second coming as the consuming fire. second coming as consuming fire. That's why he's reducing to ashes all of his enemies, represented by the Uphaz. So he's girded with gold, as in truth, righteousness, and the kingdom, to bring his enemies to ashes, being himself the consuming fire. Hope that is clear.